Welcome everybody to the Thrive Together Masterclass. It's March and our success habit is think big. So I knew the person I wanted to invite to be our special guest for this topic is John Mikesh in from Montana, also a big place, right? Christy just said she's here from Texas and Houston, another big place. But this is a topic that is so paramount, right, in the life of certainly an entrepreneur. And then in real estate, whether you're an agent in operations and transaction coordination, this whole concept of what it takes to be successful in impacting, starting with your thinking, your habits. And so, John, welcome and thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
And so to help our audience get more familiar with you, I know you from seeing you at Elite Builder events with EXP with Aaron Novello in Fort Lauderdale. And so I've gotten to know you and hear your story. But will you tell us a little bit about your story in real estate and how thinking big has been a part of your world?
Yeah, absolutely. I started in real estate in 2002 in upstate New York in the Hudson Valley area. Did really well right out of the gate. The person that brought me into real estate had a lot of confidence in me that I was going to be very good at this. It was going to be a natural fit for my personality style and just my skill set. And I kind of borrowed that belief in the beginning because I wasn't even thinking about real estate when this person invited me in. And I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And who was Rookie of the Year nominee for my MLS right out of the gate. Went on to make six figures my first year and every year thereafter.
Nice.
Um, and that was a lot to me back then. I didn't go to college. I scraped by and got out of high school. It wasn't because I wasn't smart. I just wasn't interested. It was very boring to me. It felt like a prison cell. So when I got into real estate and I started to realize that hey, I can do whatever I want in this industry. Um, my next decision was to move from upstate New York, where I kind of knew the market, knew the area, knew every back road, nook and cranny, really
Right.
knew that product that we offered there very well, which was primarily at that time a product that we sold to weekenders coming out of Manhattan. We were about 2 hours north of the city, and
Gotcha.
I just knew what they liked and knew my avatar very well. When I moved to North Carolina, I just gotten married. It was late 2006. I was very confident in that this was going to be a great move. That's like a much bigger market. There's so many more home sales, but I'd
Right.
never really done the kind of traditional home sales where you're like helping families find a home. There's kids involved and like all that. There's subdivisions and track homes. Like I didn't know anything about that. That
Yeah.
wasn't the market I came from. So I found myself very out of my element, so to speak. And before I could really find my legs under me in that new market, 2007 happened and I was in real trouble.
Ooh.
So I was working several jobs and I was working at an independent broker at that time. And I was kind of getting like the leftover leads, if you will, the leads that the owner and like the top agents that had been there a while had kind of picked through. And then they said, we can't do anything with these. Maybe you can. And that
Right.
just getting me where I needed to be. But something very important did happen for me. Actually, two things very important happened for me at that brokerage. We had really good sales trainings. So every week the owner would try to add value and he would bring somebody in. And he brought in this personal development coach. And the personal development coach did a workshop with us. And at the end of the workshop, he said, if there was anybody that would like to continue down the path of these concepts that we've gone over today, I'm willing to work with one of you. And it's my way of giving back to the communities that I serve and that I benefit from. So
Wow.
my hand shot up so fast it almost dislocated from my shoulder. And I just thought, like, man, I got to be the one he picks. I got to be the one he picks. And to my shock, there wasn't another hand raised in the room. And I'm like, how could somebody not want this? Like, this guy's amazing. And I started a relationship with that guy, and he started to hold me accountable, and he started to help me dream and vision plan. And he shared one specific book with me that became like the work that we did together the whole time that we worked together. And it was a book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter, which is a very old book. When you start reading it, he's going to mention cassette tapes and like it goes all the way
Right.
to like that 80s genre. But for me, it was everything. And at this time in real estate, like I'm not providing enough income to support myself. I have 3 jobs. I'm working this one tech job. I'm working waiting tables at night, and I'm trying to do real estate, which is a far cry from where I was a year prior in New York, where I'm like hitting it out of the park with real estate. And this book became my everything. It was like my hope. It was my goal. And I started to reprogram my mind despite these very humble circumstances that I'm finding myself in. And
Amazing.
what I started to do was repeat these mantras that were helping my subconscious kind of reprogram my reality. And what's really interesting is whether you dream big or dream small, your subconscious doesn't care. It literally has no opinion. It's just going to respond to the inputs it gets.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us, we have the same 97% of our thoughts are the same day in, day out. And for many people, most of those thoughts are negative, they're limiting, they're in disbelief, not in belief. And
Right.
they're always looking for what's wrong instead of what's possible. I had to do the work to reprogram my mind because of those circumstances I was in and because of how I was feeling about myself and beating
Yeah.
myself up. Did I make a mistake moving down here? And as I did that, some of the other exercises in this book was that I needed to start to vision cast what I wanted my life to look like so that the conversation in my head could be aligned with that. Now, it's really crazy. I had a journal and it was just like a line journal, and I would cut pictures out of what I wanted my life to look like, and I pasted them in that journal with words. So it was like the act of writing and the act of seeing. I'm a very, very visual person. Most men are. Uh,
Right.
so I had that book. So every night before bed, I would read my affirmation that I had written out for myself. I would look through these pictures. And Kathleen, the most amazing and up until my life at that point, shocking thing happened. I went from having 3 jobs, struggling, not being able to provide for myself in real estate to, I'll shortcut to the end. Within 3 years time from that moment, I had every picture that I had cut out. I had the house, I had the cars, I had the watch, I had the money, I had the business, like literally everything eerily similar to that book, to what I
Amazing.
put in that book.
Amazing. In the middle of an economic downturn.
Middle of and the second most important thing that happened while I was at that brokerage was shortly after I had this experience of coaching with this gentleman. I'm back at that Tuesday sales meeting, and one of our other agents walked into the office and he said, "Hey, I'm going to this super conference and I have a buddy ticket and it's only $500, which is a lot less than I paid. Would anybody like to come with me?" And we ended up calling the company. We ended up getting 2 buddy passes. So me, Jerry was the guy who came in with these tickets. Me, Jerry, and Randy all went down to my first real estate coaching conference. And I got there and I was blown away. And I've talked about this many times, this experience, but the short version is I saw people winning in a
Yeah.
way that I didn't at that point understand or believe was possible. And after spending the weekend with them and being at this conference and understanding what they were doing, I too believed that I could do the same thing. And I talked to the people that were at the conference that were selling things. It was old school, right? So they had like the four
Right.
pieces of paper, the white, the pink, the green, and the yellow. You
Yeah.
pressed hard, you put your credit card info, and they gave you your slip, and you were on your way with your receipt. And I asked them, I said, if I do this, could you not charge my credit card for 90 days? And they agreed to do it. And they like literally wrote it on there. And
And why was that?
what was that?
And why was that you didn't want them to charge that day? That's a great part of the story.
Well, I was so excited. I was only there for a half a day, and after the check-in process, and I started understanding what these people were making, like I was completely like just transformed into like I'm doing this. This is going to be amazing. My life had already changed in my mind at that point. I just had to do the work, which I've
Right.
never been afraid of doing the work, and that's something that I really thank my parents for. They instilled a hard work ethic in me. So I knew doing the work wasn't a problem. I just needed the strategy and the path to get there. And I felt like I already had it after half a day there. So I called
Nice.
my wife up on the lunch break and I said, "Babe, like we're going to be fine. Like I'm going to crush it. This is what I need." And she was like, "We're broke. Do not buy anything," because she's back at home managing the bills and like trying to make all this work out. And here I am at this conference all excited and she just wasn't in the mood for it. And,
Yeah.
uh, And so I went back in and I had to negotiate with these guys like, hey, don't charge my card for 90 days. I knew I could get the results I needed within 90 days because I understand the cash on cash conversion cycle of a real estate transaction. I was like, this will give me 30 days to get stuff under contract and then, 30 to 60 days to close it. Like I'll
Yeah.
be fine. And by the way, I left that conference and I made more money in the next 90 days than I had ever made in a year up until that point, even the good times that I was back in New York. So it
Mhm.
was very life changing for me. I went on to Remax. I was a top producer with one of the top Remaxes in the world, and then I built a top performing team in my market with them. I was with them for 5 years, hit all the awards and accolades, hit the Hall of Fame award with them in a 5 year period, which most people, if they're with them for a career, that's what they aspire to do. I left Remax and started my own independent brokerage. I was a co-founder and original investor in a company called Commissions Inc., which was a lead gen platform. Started a mortgage entity, had a title company that I had part ownership in, went on to do real estate coaching, and then later came over to EXP when I moved to Montana and left North Carolina. So I've been able to do a lot of really cool things in this business, and I really believe in the concept of thinking big. I was listening to my wife yesterday. She's been doing her own kind of like little personal development thing where she's been doing a live video every single day.
Okay.
Something that's very, very uncomfortable to her, but she has a vision on why she's doing it and how she's going to serve these people. And it's really good stuff. And I was listening to her share about having a strong why yesterday. And I picked up on something that was new to me. And I don't remember the statistics exactly. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. But what I remember hearing was if you have a why, a big vision, and you write it down,
Yeah.
the chances of that why coming to fruition in your life is upwards of 70%.
I think that's the number I know too.
If you have a why and you think about it but don't write it down, so you've like thought about it, visualized it, programmed it in your subconscious, but you didn't write it down, it's like 40%.
Hmm.
But the act of writing it down almost doubles the predictability of that coming to pass. And it reminded me of this exercise that I went through after reading What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, where I visualized it and I wrote it down. And it was just really like, whoa, like that's really cool. I didn't know that. But anyway, what I've learned about this, and the reason I'm more than happy to jump on a call like this is because these kind of things are not taught as much as they're caught. And
Mm.
I had the opportunity to get around people that thought differently. And essentially, what happens is we all come to our present situation with a set of beliefs. The beliefs that we have dictate the actions that we're willing to take. If I can change somebody's belief because I show them a path that feels realistic, practical, doable, and scalable for them,
Right.
I have the opportunity to change their belief, which will ultimately change the actions that they take. And when you take a different action, we all know you get a different result. So for me, going back to that original conference, I'd already done some of the programming work about where I wanted to be. Again, the subconscious doesn't care what your current reality is, doesn't care how big or small the dream is. It just responds to the inputs that it gets. So the inputs were going in. All of a sudden, this conference opportunity shows up. I go
Right.
to the conference and I get the belief I need. And as soon as I had that belief, all of my actions changed. The frequency of action, the intensity of action, the confidence that I brought to those actions. See, some people go through the motions, but they don't actually believe in the actions that they're taking. And when they don't believe in the actions that they're taking, there's a certain energy field that they put out that can be felt and actually can be measured. It's proven science at this point.
Hmm.
So if you're going through the motions and let's just say you're a real estate agent and you're in a sales rut and you're trying to get sales and you're bringing a lot of negative baggage around that and you're going to meet with clients and you're like, man, I'm showing houses and I'm knocking doors and I'm making calls, but nothing's happening for me. It's probably because you don't have a belief that something is going to happen. You don't have a belief in what you're selling. You don't have a belief in the current interest rates. You don't have some belief. And because of that, you're emitting an energy that's incongruent with what you're saying or doing, and therefore you get no results. And I've seen this play out time and time again with
Yes.
different agents that worked for me when I was running my brokerage. You know, the best thing I could do for somebody was bring somebody into my brokerage, train them up on the basics, but then let them go out and fail. Because what I knew to be true was if they just got into action and they did that in the environment that I created with other agents around them doing the action, eventually they would hear another agent have success in a sales call. And all of a sudden, their belief that the leads weren't crap would go from the leads are good because I just saw so and so get a lead, call
Yeah.
it, close it a week, and make a huge check in a month. And that was the kind of environment that I was passionate about creating. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I'm always challenging myself to think bigger. If I'm being perfectly honest, last year was just a year where I really felt like I coasted. I had just gotten really comfortable and like um almost like, man, I deserve to just kind of take it easy.
Yeah.
And I did. And here's what transpired in that year, last year, was very incongruent with my personal belief systems and my personal standards. And what I thought was going to be taking it easy was actually taking the hard route. And I had so much just like mental anguish, and I just didn't feel good, and physically and mentally. And I
Right.
just was like bored, and like I'm just super progress driven because I've accomplished so much in such a short time. And like we were just at a conference and Ed Milet was talking, and Ed Milet was talking about there's always in a lineage and a family tree, there's always the one that changes everything. And like for me, I've been that one in my family tree, and I take that super responsible. Like I have to earn that, right? So like God's given me a set of skills and talents and mindsets and people that have come into my life in a certain time in order to have allowed me to do some amazing things. And so last year I was just out of congruency with like all of those gifts and blessings and like the position that I'm in. And so I became aware of that, and I just said, okay, like 2025 is going to be a different year.
Sure.
And one of the things I always do with the people that I'm coaching or working with is like I try to help them understand, like, let's get an accurate assessment about where you are. Like, where are you currently? Like in all these different areas of your life, business, finance, health, relationships, like where are you? And what are some things that we can low-hanging fruit that we can stop doing right now? And what are
Mhm.
some things that we can start doing that are going to put us in back in alignment to that vision that we have for ourselves? So being that I do this all the time with people day in and day out, I needed to do this with myself. And one of
Mhm.
the things that I discovered was, man, if I want to feel better, I know I have to get into better action. And one of the quickest, easiest ways to do that is to get into quicker action around your health and wellness. Because if you feel better and you're working out and you're exercising and you're dieting, it like all of a sudden it's a snowball effect to every other area in your life. Like, and so I made this realization and I made this commitment, like I'm gonna start 2025 off with a New Year's resolution, as cliche as that sounds. And
Right.
I kind of like that it's cliche because I never want to be a cliche, and it put more pressure on me to really perform. I was like, I'm not going to be the guy that's part of the 80% that give up before the end of the first month. Like I'm going to be the guy that wins. So I'm like, all right, who am I going to do this with? And like, how am I going to get accountable? Because I've never accomplished anything of greatness in my life without accountability.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, who am I going to do? And lo and behold, the universe delivered.
It
And
showed up.
I was in New York, our first year back in New York in 15 years with family. We spent Christmas and New Year's there. And I'm scrolling through social media, and here it comes. And my boy Alex Sheplak, who I was watching from a distance, he's got this like nutrition and fitness coaching program. And I just saw it, and I just knew right then. I was like, this is what I have to do. Now, there was some cool things about it. There was a challenge involved, and I'm still
Right.
in that challenge. It goes till the 31st of March. But I made a commitment that I was going to not only do it, but we're talking about big goals right here, right? So like
Right.
a small commitment would have been, I'm going to do this. The big commitment was I'm going to win this. And I don't know if I'm going to win, and I may not win. There's some amazing people in this group that are really challenging and pushing all of us to be our best selves. But I made the declaration that I was going to win, and I made the commitment that I was going to win, so that even if I don't win, I've already won because I've approached it from a winning standpoint from day one, which
Yeah.
allows me to go and do things differently than. So during this challenge, I've been on vacation for almost 4 weeks, and having to make sacrifices and decisions and find places to work out when I'm, in Banff, Canada, or in Cabo in Mexico, or in Dallas for different events that I've been at. And it hasn't always been easy, right? It never is. And I think that's one of the things that I try to communicate to people day in and day out, is that things can be very simple. Like, your path to success can be very simple, but simple is not easy. And you just got to believe in your ability to figure it out. So I arrive in Banff after driving for 10 hours. We drove there from Bozeman, and I've never been there before. And it's like a bucket list place I wanted to go. And I get to my resort, and I'm just assuming that, like, they have a workout facility like everybody does anymore.
Everybody has a gym, right?
Everybody has a gym. Well, they don't have a gym. They have a closet. They have a closet with a couple broken treadmills and like an incomplete set of dumbbells that maxed out at 30 pounds. And I'm like, this is not going to work for me. So I'm like looking online. I'm like, where can I go? And I find this. They call it the Banff Center. It's basically like an artist college campus
Okay.
on the mountain, and there's like this gym in there, but it's almost like a maze to get there. So after 45 minutes the first day I go, it's 12 degrees out. I'm there to go skiing, but now I'm like looking for this workout place. I find it, I go, and I end up doing my workouts there every morning before going skiing. And it's just like, that's the difference between committed to win and committed
Yeah.
to do. If I was committed to do, like, I'd be like, I'm on vacation, like, it's okay. But committed to win is a different commitment. So like, if we're gonna dream big and we have big goals for ourselves, we all have to take inventory of our current situation, understand that, like, if you want to be the person that achieves those things or has those things or is that way,
Yeah.
and then to go from your current reality to a big, hairy, audacious goal, as we sometimes call it, you're gonna have to become a different person in order to achieve that. And I think that a lot of times what holds us back from that is nobody likes change, and
Yep.
and we become fearful. I've become fearful. Some of the greatest progresses that I've had in my life were on the backside of the scariest moments and decisions that I had to make. So I'll give you a couple. I was running my independent real estate company, obviously going from what I knew at Remax, where I had the whole second floor of the building built out specific to my needs, to cashing all that in and going out on my own, building out my own space at great expense to me and my wife. That's
Right.
risky, right? So that's scary. And it would have been easier for me to stay where I was, but where I wasn't part of the vision that I had for myself and the type of environment that I wanted to create for my agents. So I had to move. That was scary. Once I made that move, now I've just gotten there, and we had our best year ever, our first year as an independent. Now it feels like I want to just stay in that place, but the reality is we can never stay in the same place. We're always either growing or dying.
Right.
So everything in me wanted to be like, all right, everything's good. Don't rock the boat. But the reality was, I had another mentor and that came into my life at that point that challenged what my status quo was and said, John, there's so much more for you. You can build a business that gives you so much more freedom, that provides more value to your agent, because right now you're still in your business and you're still producing and you're still essentially taking deals away from your own agents. And I was like, all right, but how am I going to do that and still remain profitable to this extent and all that? And
Right.
my own level of thinking couldn't get me there. So what I had to do, and what's been proven over and over again in my life, and I believe the lives of many people that dream big and achieve a lot, is I had to see somebody else further down where I was and borrow their belief to get there. So I said, all right, man, I'm going to follow everything you tell me. I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to execute everything you say. I don't see how this is going to work out, but I'm going to trust you and I'm going to do everything you tell me to do. And if it doesn't work out, it's on you. And I've always loved those kind of relationships. And I encourage people that I work with to put it on me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I want to be in that level of commitment with people. And this person, he took that and he helped me build a business that, quite frankly, I didn't think was possible at that point. And we were there inside 24 months. A business that gave me total freedom, total day to day, like amazing income. And ultimately, I was able to leave North Carolina and travel full time around the country, which I did for 18 months until COVID happened. And then COVID happened, and my business is still running through that because of the systems and processes that this person had helped me set up. And that's what allowed me to relocate to Bozeman, Montana, which was like a dream for us to just kind of like pick up and reinvent ourselves. And by the way, that was scary as all heck too. I had
Yeah.
a conversation with my wife. We had sort of achieved the pinnacle of what we felt like we could achieve in the area that we were in, which was like Norman, North Carolina. I had one of, it's a lake with 500 miles of shoreline. I had one of the best lots on the entire lake. I could see across the water 4 different cities from where I was. We were sitting at our fire pit, and I just looked over to her and I said, "Are we gonna just stay here, or like, is this everything? Like, if we could start over, would this be what we would say is the top?" And ultimately, through that conversation, we decided it wasn't, that we wanted more. We wanted more adventure, more life. We wanted to be outside more. We wanted a different climate and a different environment with, different hobbies. And not because we didn't like our life. We loved our life. Just because like we get this one life, right?
Right.
And for me, it was like there was just more, and I wanted to experience more. And so we decided we're gonna sell it all. And we got a van, and we traveled for a year and a half, and it was the best decision I ever made. And
You and your wife and your daughter.
yeah, me and my wife and my daughter. And what happened during that time is, sometimes we set a goal and we achieve a goal and we build something, and in the process of doing that, we become identified with that thing.
Hmm.
So I had become identified with this brokerage that was successful, and like it started to become part of my identity, when really like my true belief is that we were created for so much more. We can do anything we want, much more than we can ever, realize or imagine. And I was being pulled in those two directions. But the 18 months on the road, the separation from the location, the new environment detached me from that identity. And my identity was able to grow and get bigger because it wasn't pigeonholed into that one thing.
Nice.
As so would have it, immediately when that transpired, I got to see an opportunity that was always in front of me that I never saw before. And that opportunity looked like EXP, something I was completely against and really didn't think highly of prior to, when I lived there and I was running my own brokerage, again, because my identity was in that brokerage, and anything that was outside of what I had built was jeopardizing my identity. But when I
Mm.
had that space and I was away from it, I started to look at things more open-mindedly, and I started to become curious about success that I was seeing as I was traveling around the country with this company called EXP. And I start to, wonder like, well, how could they do this, or how could they do that, or how are people like achieving this level of freedom? And
Right.
became curious and looked at it, and ultimately decided to bring my brokerage onto that platform, not giving up my identity. My brand still stayed the same. I just had a new platform that I could operate on,
Yeah.
which opened up all these borders for me. Went on to build a very big organization very quickly with EXP, and it's given me a lifestyle and a freedom that, again, when when I started that brokerage, I couldn't see how I could have a business that would be so much better. In 2 years, I did that. I left there, and now I have a business that's 100 times better than any business I've ever had, from a freedom standpoint, from an income standpoint, from an overall like well-being standpoint, in the fact that I get to coach and work with people, and there's total alignment. Like, I'm never going to give somebody that I work with advice that's not in their best interest, because this model is aligned vertically to infinity, where even if I help somebody and they grow bigger than me, that still helps me to the maximum extent. So I like that there was no glass ceilings, there was no ulterior motives. And it helped me realize that when I was running a traditional brokerage, I was only helping people so long as they could help within this little bubble that I created. And if there was an opportunity for that person to rise above that, well, that was where my help stopped, because I didn't want to help them become my competition. In this
Yeah.
model, there's none of those barriers or walls, and I can help somebody to the furthest extent that I'm humanly possible able to help them, and it never hurts me. It only helps us both. So I really love that. Um, in thinking big, like from this point forward, we've got some big goals as a family, and what we're going to do over the next couple of years to grow our organization. We've got some scary things that we're looking at doing that are going to be a big financial commitment. but really kind of gave birth to us when we were all together at the Elite Builders meeting. We just saw the community that Aaron's built and kind of and Jose and just what they've done. And going to that event 2 years in a row and seeing the growth that's happened in just 1 year was very amazing to me. And my wife got to experience it this time too. But we just
Yeah.
put a vision about like bringing experience and togetherness to people that are in this industry that maybe, at the top of their game, but they feel like they're totally alone, and kind of bring those people into a fold. And we've got some cool things that we're working on right now that we're excited to bring. And then beyond that, my daughter's going to be graduating high school in a couple of years. And once she moves on to her next thing and we're empty nesters, we got some big goals to, maybe live overseas in Italy for a while and just kind of hit that reset button and take on some more adventure and some more uncertainty in our life and see where it goes.
Well, and we're global, so all kinds of things are possible. So thank you for everything you've shared. I want to unpack some of the layers that you have brought forward. And one of the elements in the think big and the risk taking that you've described, what do you see that agents, transaction coordination companies, right, entrepreneurs are, how do they weigh out that risk, the fear, and the possibility in that belief? How do you help people be able to evaluate where they can, make sense of that to take action?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things to do is, we get into our day to day, and like the more we do the same thing, the tighter our mindset or our vision around that thing contracts and we hit like a homeostasis.
Yeah.
What's always worked for me is getting outside of my box. So being involved in coaching, being involved in masterminds, getting around big thinkers, part of what my wife and I want to bring to other people, right? So it's always been those environments that stretched me. To that point, when I had the vision and the realization that I needed to leave Remax, it was because I went to a mastermind event
Right.
and I met Christina Wise, who had built this amazing real estate company. Actually, Apple had like a series on iPad and business, and she
Right.
was one of the featured testimonials of them at this amazing brokerage she had built in Texas that felt like a high-end coffee shop before that was happening.
Right.
Before everybody had cool offices like they have now. It was like very innovative. And I said, I want that for me and my people. So I knew I couldn't have that in the structure and status that I was in at Remax. So I had to find another way. I had to create it. But it was like if I had never went to that event and never had time to meet her and sit down with her, I would have never had her borrowed belief to be able to take that action to do that. So, I think it's getting around people that think bigger, differently, putting yourself in those environments. And then I think it's finding a proven path. So like maybe you're a transaction coordinator right now and you're like, I can't possibly handle more than 20 transactions a month. But you go find somebody who's doing 80 transactions a month and you learn about systems that you didn't know were available. You learn about ways of handling a client that you've never thought of before. And
Right.
all of a sudden, you can see the path to like maybe that is possible. So I'm a big believer in we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We
Yeah.
don't have to trial and error this thing. And one of the things I try to communicate with my agents is like, hey, if you're stuck at 1 or 2 deals a month, the chances of you bumbling and fumbling your way into 10 or 20 deals a month is almost non-existent. But as somebody who's done 20 plus deals a month for decade plus, I can show you what needs to be in place so that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. So
Yeah.
I really believe in this idea of a guide. So like find some people that are maybe where you want to be or further down the path that you're already on and figure out how you can borrow their experience to shortcut that for yourself. We live in this day and age in this world where content is pretty much free. There's some
Right.
behind paywalls, but I believe all the content we ever need to do anything we want is free. I mean, you can go out and find people that are the world's foremost experts on books, right? So you can go read a book, their life's work. You can go read in 3 to 5 hours, and you can go do that 5 times, and now you have expert level knowledge in whatever that thing is. Like, how amazing is that? We live in the greatest time that's ever been. So, we just have to not be a victim. So it's like victim and victor mentality is big for me. You
Yeah.
have to, as one of my most expensive masterminds I've ever been in. I was in a private mastermind with Brendan Burchard, and very expensive. And my biggest takeaway from that expense was believe in your ability to figure it out. There's nothing that's not figure outable. Like
Mhm.
you just gotta be willing to know that the reason that you are where you are is because you haven't learned something that you need to learn to get to a different place. And you have to be willing to proactively go find it and do the work to get there.
I love that. Now, let's look at the other side of this same issue inside a relationship. So the entrepreneur decides, yep, this is my think big. Yes, I can see the path. And now sometimes there are people at home that may not see that path and they didn't go to that mastermind and they didn't go to that conference. And
Yeah.
so how do you help how did you navigate that with Jennifer, and how do you help, people that you coach navigate that other side of the equation, which is the relationships at home?
Yeah. I mean, you don't navigate it as much as you earn it. So when I deal with situations, whether it was my own, like when I went to that first conference and my wife was like, don't buy anything, it was because up until that point, we'd been married less than a year. I hadn't demonstrated to her that I had the power or ability to make significant change that was going to have a lasting result. Now, when I go to stuff, my wife's the first one pushing me to sign up for that mastermind that feels like a scary expense to me. She's the first one pushing me out of my comfort zone because I've demonstrated over time that I have an ability to go to that next level if I will take that chance and put that work in. And she's not afraid of failing because she knows that I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to get there. So we have to be 100% responsible. This is like a key for any relationship. If you
Hmm.
go into a relationship and it's 50-50, you're going to fail every time because it's never going to end up 50-50. It's always going to be in that moment for that thing 60-40, 70-30, 99-1. You just have to own it and be, I'm 100% responsible
Yeah.
for this situation in my relationship, and I don't need anything from them in return in order to win at this. And when you adopt that mindset, everything will change for you. And you're going to have to maybe start slow. You're going to have to start to earn it. You're going to have to start to change your behaviors, your patterns, your ways of thinking. You're going to have to show your spouse or significant other that you're committed and it's different this time. And that's going to show up in your day-to-day actions. If you say, hey, I want to make this investment and I want to make this change in my business, but then day in and day out, you go do the same thing and you spend your evenings, on the lazy boy watching TV and potato chips. What do you think the chances are that they think anything's changed? Now they just see it as an extra expense or an extra, encumbrance or, detriment to their financial statement each month. You've
Right.
got to go out and show them that you're willing to put the work in to make the change happen.
So I love that you look at it that way. And this is also goes along with something that we talk about in my real estate operations business, which is it is often in the breakdown or in something that isn't working or something that didn't go as planned that becomes that some might consider failure, but that is an opening now for, well, what would work better? What system should we put in place? Was this something we could have prevented, or really was this something that took us by surprise? So how do you help people also mitigate the failure and the fear of failure, that they can put all of that into action, they can see the path, but there may still be adjustments along the way that are considered to be failures?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of, the definition of disappointment is just unmet expectation. So
Hmm.
we go into, say, a change in our operational structure, and we expect it to be a smooth trajectory up and to the right. We're going to be disappointed because that expectation is not reality.
Yeah.
Like we're always going to have failure and setback, but if we look at failure as the stepping stone to success, and we embrace it and adjust and make distinctions along the way, when a lot of times when I'm talking to an agent and we're looking at their operations, it's because they've never even done the work to identify who they are in this game. When we think about the E-Myth, there's the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. A lot of times that's the most basic understanding of like, hey, we need all three of these hats to operate in this business. and you're just a technician or you're just an entrepreneur who's not willing to do the work or manage the process, yeah, no wonder it's chaos. So we've got to backfill those roles if they're not happening, and we've got to get people that are actually good at doing those things, which is why I love your company and what you do, is because you bring people that are vetted out, that are disc aligned with the activities and the tasks that they're doing, so that, you know, the entrepreneur or the technician can be those things. You know, we deal with the technician, the top producer who loves doing the thing, but doesn't want to take the time to put any systems in place. So they're just always on that hamster wheel. Or we deal with the entrepreneur who just wants to think big all the time, but doesn't realize that there's work that has to be done in order to achieve that big vision. And they don't take the time to backfill the manager or the technician and train them properly. They're just like, hey, here's a new person, let's go make it happen, and we're on to the next thing. So like having a strong operations is vital to any company's success. And we've got to identify who those people are going to be and what roles they're going to fulfill, and make sure that it's the right person, or as we like to read in the energy bus, that the right butts are in the right seats.
Yes, and that in that progression, right, that you're all going to learn from it. You're going to make that progress together. So, do you also know the book The Big Leap
Yeah.
by Gay Hendricks, about
Yeah.
how good are we going to let it get? Will you talk a little bit about how I think that's also something that can hold agents back, is there is comfort and familiarity in the grind.
Yeah.
In thinking big, it's like, oh, I don't really know what that would be like. It might be too good, right? We might hit that big leap ceiling.
Yeah, some people are predispositioned or pre-programmed to have like a fear of like huge success. You know, maybe it's trauma from their, you know, they're growing up. There's just something there that says like, if I achieve this level of success, it will be bad for me.
Yeah,
And subconscious just takes the input and makes it so that that doesn't happen. I've never had that problem, thankfully. But you know, it's also similar to what we call the gap in the gain, by Dan
yes,
Sullivan. So it's like this idea that like no matter how good it gets, like some of us type A, like highly driven people, we're always like, oh, but we're not there yet. And some interesting studies have been done on this, regarding wealth too. And you know, it's like no matter who they ever interviewed over the years, it was like, man, like if I was a millionaire, I'd be good. But they interviewed the millionaire and they said like when are you going to be good? And they're like, when I have, you know, 5 million. And then they interviewed the guy that has 100 million. When are you going to be good? When I have 1 billion. And they
yeah,
interviewed Rockefeller and they said, when are you going to be good? And on average, whatever the person's success was, whether they were a thousandaire, a millionaire, a billionaire, on average, this study, which was very well documented, was that regardless of how much we have, on average, we feel like we need 4.3 times what we have to be good, which is just a very mind-blowing thing. And like something that
4.3.
4.3. That was the average. And it's like, man, if I had 4.3 times as much, I'd be good. And that's very, very interesting. And I would, if I'm being honest, I would say that I have felt that along my journey. Like I'm at a level right now that my 25-year-old self like just couldn't even imagine.
Yeah.
But like I kind of feel like I need a little more, you know? So it's important to analyze that and take some time and be grateful and appreciative of what we do have. You know, and I try to create a practice around that. That mentor that I talked to you about that I worked with, one of
Yes.
the things that he had me do that I still do to this day, not every day, but most days, when I'm lying in bed and I wake up, I try to think about 10 things I'm grateful for before my feet hit the ground. And it's just become a practice where like it's a simple thing, right? Like we
Right.
can think about 10 things we're grateful for before our feet hit the ground. Try doing that for 60 days and develop it into a habit. And then tell me that doesn't make your life better. Because so much we get stuck in that gap and game mentality. And we're like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. We're behind on this project, or this didn't happen so far. And it's just like, man, like our whole life will go by like that. And we'll
Right.
never take time to savor and be grateful. Like today, I left the gym this morning and, you know, it gets cold here in Bozeman. Um, get a lot of snow, a lot of cold. And we were just up in Banff and it was like in the teens. But like today, it feels like spring. Like I walked out of the gym and it was probably already like almost 50 degrees, which is First time that's happened in 6 months, right? So I told my wife when I got home, I was like, I got these calls today. I was like, but let's go out on a hike. Like when I finish, it's so gorgeous out. We have to go outside. And it's just like just creating those special moments in your day and like looking at your day and your week. And if there's maybe there's something in your day or week right now that you just really don't like doing. Like think about a way that you could eliminate that thing or like create a plan that you could get to a certain point to where you could eliminate that thing. Because I think the more we can eliminate those things that don't serve us or that bring us down and replace them with things that uplift us, like
Yeah.
I truly feel at this point, especially after taking most of last year off, like I'm not working. I'm doing things that I love doing with people that I love helping. And we're having this experience of life together. And I want to do that for as long as I can live. Like
Right.
it doesn't feel like work to me. I actually enjoy it. I'd rather be doing this than not doing this, which became clear to me last year or so.
Yes, and so to be able to let's go down that path of practice, right? These practical things that people can do. Christy may know our colleague David Breckheimer, who's like the king of all transaction coordination in my mind. He has a business called Cultivate Wins, and one of his strategies and philosophies is that everyone should have three little mini wins that they have every day. And so if you get those three things done, kind of like the 10 things to be grateful for, and that might be you made your bed, you made a phone call, like make sure that you hold on to that gain, right?
Yeah.
That you're winning. And so what those practices are for you. So one of the things we talked about, and I'm just looking over at my notes that I had for our talk today, is moving from an agent mindset to a CEO. So that's similar to the E-Myth Revisited, but talk a little bit, if you will, about that distinction from thinking like an agent to thinking like someone who owns a business.
Yeah, definitely. And real quick, just on those 3 wins,
Yes.
my wife has a practice that is really good that works for her. I don't personally do it. I don't know why. Like I probably should, but I really like it and I watch her do it and I can notice when she's doing it consistently, like a difference in her demeanor. But it's called the 5 minute journal and it's a
Yes.
gratitude journal and it just gives you spots to write 3 things at the end of your day that you're grateful for and 3 wins that you had. So I think that's super cool.
Yes.
Um, so thinking like a CEO, you know, the difference between being an agent and a CEO is, when I was an agent, the people that I bought and sold houses to are my clients, right?
Right.
When I transitioned to a CEO, my clients are now my agents,
Mm-hmm.
and their clients are the people that buy and sell houses.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go from how do I best serve my buyer or seller to how do I best serve my agent.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to best serve my agent, I needed to be very mindful of the environment that we were in, the technology that we were using, the
Okay.
systems and processes that we put in place. And I needed to do the work to be able to find the inefficiencies and errors in those systems or the areas of improvement that would make their life easier. Because if I could create that efficiency, they could get more yield out of their day, their week, and they could achieve more. And I always believe that my role as the CEO is not so dissimilar to a coach, right? Like I'm not the one putting the reps in on the field, but I need to make sure that they practice perfectly to get perfect results. And I have to organize all that because left to their own demise, they don't want to do it, right?
Sure.
If I create the environment for them to win, which means that I've gotten them to do something that they wouldn't do on their own, now I'm a good CEO because at the end of the day, if my agent can get a result and I have no bearing on the result they get, then I'm not doing anything for them. But if I can bring an agent in that maybe is let's say a $50,000 a year producer, which is above average in our industry,
Yes.
and I can work with them over a period of 12 months and now they're $150,000 a year earner and now they're in the top elite percentage of individual agents, then I feel like I've really done something. And
Mm.
what you'll notice is high performing teams always have a high performing culture. And a lot of people, culture has become this buzzword over the years. And a lot of people are like, oh, let's have fun, let's have culture. And what I see people do is they're in the CEO role, but they're trying to friend their agents into success instead of
Yeah.
coaching their agents into success. And I've always tried to be the coach. We can be friendly, but I'm less concerned if we're friendly and more concerned if we're effective working together. And I believe that's why we were able to build a very high performance team as a brokerage, but also in EXP as well.
I love that you're talking about that because I often get to work personally with top producing agents who are at that fulcrum point of they've started to bring on agents either into their team or into their brokerage or into their organization, and they're on their way to working potentially out of production. Which also then takes me to the next point I want us to talk about, which is replacing hustle with leverage,
Yeah.
and
So
then what that can look like.
when top performing agents, they get accustomed to this like binary system of I do this and I get this.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trying to go to a leverage position of say team leader, kind of the first step, it's like I'm going from agent to team leader to broker. When we go to the team leader, definition, now we've got to move some levers and help some people do things. And a lot of times it's the concept that we have to understand is 80% done 80% is better than me doing it 100%.
Oh, that's good. Yes,
That,
yes.
that concept is like, hey, because we get stuck in the E-Myth talks about this about the technician. It's like, I do it better than you. Well, we're going to bring somebody on and train them, and they might do it half as good as us to start. Our job is to train them up to their max potential. What you'll find is that you'll find some people that can actually do it better than you.
Yeah.
I've trained agents that are better agents than I was, but a lot of times we get people and they're in our estimation, maybe they don't do it as well as we do, and we think we're failing, but we're still winning if we understand the power of leverage and that we could have 10 people doing it 80% as well as us, and we'll get far further than us doing it 100% of the time. So it's the concept of I'd rather have 100 people. I'd rather have 1% of 100 people's efforts than 100% of mine, because eventually I'm going to tire and I'm not going to be able to do 100% anymore. But if I have 100 people doing 1%, chances are some of them are going to do 3%, 5%, 10%, and all of a sudden we can build, something huge and amazing.
So this also touches on the ego element of I can do it better. And my business started as a hiring company for real estate agents to hire their assistant. And
Yep.
I had someone working with me as my assistant and sort of my director of operations. And then I trained her to be a recruiter. She was really, really good. She could fill jobs faster than I could. And it was very satisfying, but I was ready, right, to move into more coaching. And so it actually worked great. But I do think there is an element of ego resistance in people who are attached to, I think I can do it better. So how do you help agents open that up so that their ego isn't running that show?
Yeah, it's a challenging thing. It's something I deal with every day when I'm trying to show the opportunity to people is like, well, they want it to be their show or their thing. And I can relate to that from what I talked about before about my identity being in the brokerage I'd built. Um, I don't know. It's just part of maturing and growing up is understanding that like for me that there is this higher power out there, and like I'm just blessed to be here, and I'm so imperfectly perfect. And
Yes.
if I think that I'm the catalyst to everything great, like how small is my world? And like my world's just so much bigger than that. Like I'm just one step ahead of the person that I'm trying to help. That's the way I phrase it. And I believe I can help you, and I can help you get to a better place. And that may last for a season, it may be for a specific reason. And
Yeah.
in very rare cases, it will be for a lifetime. But most of the people that we come into contact with and interact, like we're just helping them on their journey, and they're on their own journey. So for me, it's like having a big ego is limiting. Like that's the way I see it. It's like
Mhm.
my ego is always limiting my potential in any situation or circumstance. So I've just trained myself to recognize it, try to overcome it, and just be open, because a lot of times, and I'm sure you've experienced this too with your company, is like we learn the most from the people that we help the most. So, here we are, we think we're in a position of, call it superiority or, achievement or excellence, and we're helping this person down here that's below that. But some of the greatest lessons we learn are from these people that we're helping, and it helps us be, humble and open-minded and know that, hey, we don't have it all figured out. You know, one of the things I read in a Benjamin Hardy book that always stuck with me that I really liked was, if we're truly growing and we're on our own path of inner excellence, and we're doing the work, we should be so unrecognizable 12 months from now.
Mm.
And it's like, are you the same today as you were 12 months ago? Are you still beating that same drum? Are you still having the same mindsets? Are you still impacting people the same way? Well, then maybe there's an opportunity there to suppress that ego and be open to what's out there, because I just want to grow. I want to get on a call just like this next year. And I want somebody to listen to this call, and I want them to listen to the call next year and want to be like, that guy's a totally different person. And that's what I experienced this year when I went back to the Elite Builders Conference. I said, wow. I said, I was here last year and it was good, but it's like these people running this conference are totally different than they were a year ago. And that excites me. I want to be around people like that.
Yeah, that's great.
But you can't do that if you're already the best there is. You know what I mean? If that ego is so big, there's no room for growth in. It's the same with money. It's like, we coached privately with Dave Ramsey when we were way back in the day struggling. And we were at his house having dinner with him. And one of the things he said to us was, he said, you guys are here because you want to improve your financial situation. You want to be better leaders and stewards of these things. He said, but here's the deal. You can't receive if you're like this.
Mm.
So he encouraged us in that time to be open, be grateful, be generous, because if we're starting out like this, there's nowhere to receive.
There's nowhere to receive.
And I think the same is true with the ego. If we're closed-minded, there's no openness to receive and become better.
Oh, what a beautiful way to put a bow on this topic at the top of the hour. That's really great. Before we close up, Christy, was there anything that you wanted to add or put in the chat before we close up for today?
I don't think so. It was a really good session, and a lot of the books that you mentioned, and um, I I have a lot of those books and or have heard of them. I also used to coach with Dave Ramsey's team, not him personally. That would have been amazing. But yeah, no, really, really good stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Christy.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I made note in the chat of most of the books. I didn't get the name of the first book in the chat. What was that very first book that you also have, Christy?
It was What to Say When You Talk to Yourself.
What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. So we'll make sure that all of those get into the show notes as well, so that people can look those up for themselves. Thank you for being here, John. Thank you so much. I'm so happy that you're in my life.
Equally grateful for being here, and thank you for the time.
My great pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.